If you've ever thought that you're not eligible for rebates, that you earn too much money, you couldn't be more wrong. When it comes to energy rebates, it's not the case. There are thousands of dollars available. I'll even give you an example of someone who saved over $20,000 without any means of testing. Find out what's going on with the rebates so you don't miss out now. It always surprises me how many homeowners assume they're not eligible for government rebates. A good 90% of the government support that's available towards all electric home solutions is not means tested and there for the taking. This is not a handout. This is about us as a country, as a state, as a community, as a council area, moving towards an all electric future and reaching our targets of net zero. These incentives are about making change towards a more sustainable future and more sustainable products, regardless of how nice your home is or how much money you make. If you've been thinking about it and think that you are going to miss out, now is the time to make a change. We're going to go through who's eligible for what as we keep going on. So I'm sure you're starting to wonder now what is actually means tested and what is not. There is always a different headline or a different Facebook ad telling you that something is ending, and so many people just don't understand how it works. There's 3 different types of programs that we can access for you. The first one is what we call STCs. These are small scale technology certificates and they are a federal Australia-wide incentive. There's very minimal requirements for this one and they cover solar, batteries and hot water systems. VEECs would be our next scheme that we have to consider, and VEECs are a state initiative, so they're only for Victoria and they relate to hot water and also heating and cooling. Again, not means tested. What actually is means tested is our Solar Victoria program, and that one again is just for Victoria. I think it's quite generous. It has a means testing of a household income under $210,000 for one of the last 2 financial years. And there's a trick to making sure that you get the correct answer of whether or not you're eligible, and I'm going to cover that as we move along. Now that you know that we've got these 3 initiatives, STCs, VEECs and Solar Victoria, every promotion you see is going to fall into one of those. How the STCs work is you get a certain number of credits depending on what you do. So say you have a 5 kilowatt solar system, depending on the date of install and the suburb that you live in. Regional gets slightly more incentives than Metro Melbourne. You'll get a certain number of credits. So you might get, I don't know, for this example, we'll use 40 STCs. Those 40 STCs are then equivalent to a certain value. Each one of them might be worth $35 each. 40 times 35 gives you the number of STCs you're going to get. And then when we look at batteries, it's the same thing. You are eligible for a certain number of STCs depending on the size of your battery. And the battery rebate does change often, so it's important you know what you're eligible for at the time you get a quote. Heat pumps are a little bit more consistent. They don't change as much on size. They just decrease like the others each year, and you get a few STCs towards your hot water too. None of that is means tested. None of that requires an application. All of that is done by your installer. All that's required of you is to sign off after the install to say it's been complete. Wondering what the VEECs are and where they come into this? The VEECs are similar to STCs in that they're a certificate-based scheme and they have a value. Now, here at Bluegum, VEECs can sometimes be the vein of our existence, and I'll tell you more about that as we go on. But the VEECs apply to heating and cooling upgrades, and they also apply to hot water upgrades. So for your hot water, which we spoke about earlier, you can have both STCs and both VEECs. You get a certain amount of certificates, and those certificates have a certain value. Now, the reason I mentioned that sometimes VEECs can be the vein of our existence is they change all the time. They're not very stable. But the good news is STCs are quite stable and we don't usually have to deal with any changes there. The one and only rebate, or program I should say, that is means tested is our Solar Victoria. We mentioned that before. That has that means testing of $210,000 for a household and under $3 million for a property value of a home. And it applies to solar, and heat pumps. It does not apply to batteries. It has applied to batteries in the past, but at the moment and for the future, it is only going to apply to solar or heat pumps, and it does decrease regularly each financial year. At the moment, we have a panel rebate for putting solar panels on, and we have a heat pump rebate for installing a heat pump. And if you go with an Australian made heat pump like the Reclaim that we sell at Bluegum here, you get an additional amount of money as well. 3 different incentives over 4 different services. STCs, VEECs and Solar Victoria, those are our schemes that we operate in. Both VEECs and STCs are credit or certificate based programs. Depending on what you do, you get a certain number of certificates, and those certificates have value. Solar Victoria is our only true what we call a rebate at a fixed amount. While it changes each financial year, it's always a set amount and is not based on the value of certificates at any one point in time. Now, the rebate that's getting all the talk and all the media attention is our battery incentives. Now, these are STCs, exactly what we spoke about earlier, and a scheme we've had for solar for many, many years, but the government has named it the Cheaper Home Battery Program. The reason the batteries are a little different is they do have some small eligibility requirements in that you can only claim them once. Nothing to do with your income or how much your house is worth, but you can only claim one time. Whereas solar STCs and heat pumps, they're not limited like that. If you put on a second hot water system or if you put on additional solar, you're still eligible again. Batteries are a one-time hit, and the battery rebate funding comes from somewhere different and is processed a little differently. So battery rebates are funded by the government, whereas solar and heat pump STCs are actually funded by our big corporations who use a lot of power. Once they reach a certain estimated level of pollution, they are required to purchase STCs each year to keep them compliant. There used to be a battery rebate for Solar Victoria, but it does not exist anymore. Those who took the battery rebate for Solar Victoria are still eligible for the battery rebate for STCs if they take it now. However, they're not eligible for the heat pump rebate for Solar Victoria. That is the only requirement. Additional requirement is that someone who took a previous battery rebate from Solar Victoria isn't eligible for a Solar Victoria heat pump rebate. But there are some tricks on the Solar Victoria front that I'll tell you about as we get towards the end. None of these, other than what I spoke about before with the heat pump Solar Victoria, all of these can work together. Let me give you an example. If a customer comes to us looking for solar and maybe a battery, they can have STCs towards that solar system, they can have STCs towards that battery system. As part of that conversation, they decide they want to get rid of their gas hot water system to make their hot water electric and powered by their new solar and battery ecosystem they're building. When they do that, they're also going to get STCs towards their heat pump, and they're going to get VEECs for making a more efficient choice and doing a replacement. Then all that goes really well, and 6 months later they come back and they decide it's time to get rid of the gas heating. We want to power our heating and cooling off this great system we have. They are then eligible for VEECs for replacing their gas ducted heater with an all-electric solution. All of these rebates combined can be well over $20,000, and we haven't even spoken about Solar Victoria. Majority of the government funding and support is not means tested, and all of these can be stacked together either at one time or at a later date. We recently had a customer last year who we had quoted on adding a battery to their existing solar system. We are not for making fast rebate decisions, but you need to understand you will miss out if you don't move forward. So this particular customer had a quote at the end of 2025. They decided not to proceed at that time, and they came back in 2026 for an update. They then had a couple of other things get in the way, life gets busy, and they came back end of April 2026 for an update again, and the price difference purely due to the government rebates between, say, October 2025 and April 2026 was nearly $8,000 in missed government rebates. This is why you need to make sure that you act once you know what the right solution is. So the key thing to understand and how you can avoid this type of situation is, firstly, make sure you've got the right solution. Once you get the right solution and you know that this is something you want to do for your home, then do it now. Don't plan for it in 2 years' time. Every single one of the schemes we spoke about today all decrease every single year. And the intention behind that is that the government believes that the system won't need as much support moving forward. Each calendar year, STCs and VEECs decrease, and Solar Victoria at their own discretion will usually decrease on a financial year instead of calendar year. Even if you can start with stage 1 now and expand on it later, the best time to get solar is always been yesterday. And the same goes for all these other products. So start somewhere, move forward, and you will save more money with these government rebates.